Hello, it's me, Kyle. Welcome back to Give Pause Hobby. And for the first time in a while, we are talking about a new ROOTbot faction. We've been kind of doing the quick piloting episodes, which hopefully have been helpful for some folks, either to cut their teeth with a shorter time span, or to be a pop quiz for those who listen to the longer episodes. Well, this is going to be one of those longer episodes, though I don't think that long of an episode, about a new faction, the Drillbit Duchy, the ROOTbot version of the moles. I don't think it's going to be that long because I think this is, in a lot of ways, it fits the same bill that the Mechanical Marquise 2.0 did when I rebooted this whole series. Not just because of setup order. I didn't just start with them because of that. I started with them because I think that's a really great ROOTbot faction to get used to the system with. I also think, thanks to the reach value, it's going to make a lot of games viable that other factions wouldn't necessarily. Drillbit Duchy, with the ROOTbot version of the moles, is going to solve a lot of the same things, being a large reach, a militant faction, but it's also, there's more complexity to it than the cats, I would say, overall, but it's not too much. It's not too much to wrap your head around. But one part that the Mechanical Marquise did not have, I think, over my time playing with the Clockwork Expansion and the BetterBot projects, this has become my new favorite ROOTbot faction to use. And I'll get to why later on, but I'll give you a hint. It's in this part of the player board. I just got my copy of Clockwork 2 a few days ago, and I'm very excited to be using the actual published versions. In terms of like the specifics on the board, there's not that much that's different, but it's just nice to have actual, printed Leader Games product as opposed to what I can do at Kinko's. So along with that, we have our new Law of Rootbotics, which is twice as long as it was before, and has this nice kind of spread in the middle where you have Clockwork 1 factions here and Clockwork 2 factions there, and then on either side of the split are the two groups. So we are going to flip forward. This is number 10 in the book. Now, I could have just gone in order, but for all the things I mentioned before, I think this one fills up reach value really well. Well, it does. That's not my personal opinion. I think it's relatively easy to wrap your head around, but also I just really love this. I just want to dive right into the faction that has hit my table more often than not, and give that to you first. And I'll go through the other ones, I'm not gonna lie, probably in order of my comfort level, which is to say, if you're here for the Rivet folk, that's going to be further down the road. Yeah, we'll get to the next ones when we get to them. So, just like in the original Clockwork factions, we'll start off, remember, put on your Klingon subtitles. If there's any mistakes that I have, I'll try to address those. If there's big ones, I'll address them in another video. And also the timestamps down below are in the order that you will see rules in the Law of Rootbotics. So if you're following along with the player board, just kind of go along with whatever area I'm talking about. But if you're looking through the actual rule book, that should make it pretty easy to figure out what I'm talking about. So right off at the top, the overview. The Duchy has begun their invasion of the woodland from the great lands below, emerging from fresh tunnels at a moment's notice. As they secure their foothold, their ministers will grow bold and add to their duchy's capabilities, punish them by destroying their buildings and driving them back into the dark. Oh, right, and the name, the Drillbit Duchy. So this went through some changes. Originally, for a long time, it was the Dummy Duchy. I think I do like the Drillbit Duchy. I mean, especially because, I don't know what came first, that name or the Kyle Farron artwork, but it matches it pretty darn well. And I mean, that is just like the most adorable robot I've ever seen. So 10.2, factions, rules, and abilities. Up at the top, they in the berries area, they still have poor manual dexterity and hate surprises. If you don't know what those are, you may have missed episode 0. It was linked at the beginning of the video and down below. Go check it out there. So I'll go into detail. But cost of errors is a new one, and this is the robot version of price of failure. And it says, whenever any number of duchy buildings are removed, remove the crown from the bottommost swayed minister. And I really like that. Not only do they try to get the same flavor of the player faction with these, but if the rule is distinct from the player one, which oftentimes it is, they'll get a very similar name that is not the same, because our brains are limited in their processing and their memory. And if it's if it just said price of failure, then if over time, if I was doing more, meat bag playing or more ROOTbot playing, that would sort of overwrite that. And then whenever I read price of failure, it might go boop and insert the thing, which wouldn't be correct. So this is any number of buildings, not every building, but are removed. Remove the crown from the bottommost swayed minister. We talked about the other ones, but then also in the rule book, not on the player board, the burrow. It is an unsuited clearing adjacent to each clearing with the tunnel token. Non-duchy pieces cannot be placed in or moved into the burrow. The duchy always rules the burrow, even with no pieces there, in parentheses, as normal. So this is just, if you've played the duchy, you know what you need to know about the burrow, simply put. Next up, faction setup. So eagle-eyed viewers may have realized, I mentioned this in the other ones, they actually use this part of the board for setup, which I'm not gonna lie, it may mess up my thumbnail creating abilities. But I'm okay with that because it's a big, huge plot of land that they can be putting information on. So setup is as follows. Gather your pieces. Form supplies of 20 warriors, 3 tunnels, and 9 crowns. Now when you do this, you're going to want to put 9 warriors in one group and the other 11 in a different group, and we'll come back to why. So very neatly put 3, 3, and 3, like a little area that's very clearly 9, and then the rest just in a big lump. Again, we'll come back to it. Step 2, prepare the burrow. Place the burrow board near the map. Done. Surface. Place 2 warriors and 1 tunnel in a corner clearing that's not the starting corner clearing of another bot, and if possible is diagonally opposite from the starting corner clearing. Then place 2 warriors in each clearing adjacent to the corner clearing, except the burrow. So you're going to have your 2 warriors and a tunnel in a corner, and then either in those 2 or 3 clearings adjacent to it, 2 more warriors in each. You're going to fill your buildings track with 3 markets, 3 citadels, and then you're going to sway your starting ministers. So this faction was really cool in the process of this being developed, was that I was regularly playing with the most up-to-date version of Better Bot Project, which was not true at all for the first Clockwork factions. But in Clockwork 2, I played a number of the different versions. That was the Winding the Gears episodes that I put out. So I was playing factions before and after those updates were made. And this, swaying the starting ministers, was something that was not there originally. And I think it really gives it some teeth and makes it really interesting. So your 5th step of setup, you're going to draw 2 cards and discard them. For each, place a crown on the topmost matching unswayed minister on your faction board. So over here, and I mentioned before, this is a big part of why I like this bot the most of all the ROOTbots, and it's because more so than any, actually the only one that actually gains a personality, not just one that we assign to it based on what they've done, but this actually rewrites what it's going to do over the course of the game based on which ministers become swayed. So in this opening step, you could get 2 fox ministers. You could get the top 2. You get 2, it depends on the different suits you get are going to totally change how the duchy will play from the very beginning of the game. And then, as we'll go over in the turn, you'll actually be swaying these as you go, and therefore the ROOTbot actually changes as the game goes on, which again I think is just awesome. You get that right from the bat. There's never like a neutral mole turn where they don't have any ministers, thanks to this change in the setup, which I think is good. So with that, I'm gonna put the book down. We're going just off the board. So we go to Birdsongs. Reveal the top card of the deck as order card. Number 2, craft an order card for 1 victory point if it shows an available item. So far, so good. Again, doesn't matter what victory points it would actually be. They only get 1 if they craft it. But they just get to craft it. They don't need any other requirements. So, the pros and cons. And third step, recruit 2 warriors plus 1 per mole showing in the burrow. Showing, in the burrow. So over here in citadels, we have 1, 1, and 2. Remember, as we build citadels from left to right, we are going to increase the number of moles that they are going to be putting out on the board. Now this ramp is slightly different than the player moles. That is 1, 2, and 2, and this is 1, 1, and 2. So there you go, there's that. And then also in recruit, there's a reminder, and this happens elsewhere on the board, it says remember 4 mole. So the 4 mole and the captain are both ministers that have abilities. So that says that, and they're in italics, but it says you have an additional revealed mole icon. So I like that it's right there at recruit. It reminds you to go over and check to see if you have that minister swayed. And that's it, that's Birdsong. So daylight. First up is dig. If the burrow has 4 or more warriors, place a tunnel in an ordered clearing with no tunnel and no duchy buildings, and also move 4 warriors from the burrow into it. So at the beginning of the game, you won't be digging. There are other turns later in the game where you also might not be digging. Maybe all your moles are out on the board and you can't be recruiting into the burrow. So you need 4 or more. It goes to a ordered clearing without a tunnel and with no duchy buildings, and then you move those moles into it. So this is there isn't like an escalated daylight or something super fantastic that happens for bird cards, but this is one of the kind of decentralized like changes that happen with bird cards in the dig action. So if it is not a bird, the clearing ties are taken care of in such a clearing with the most empty building slots, then fewest enemy warriors. If it is a bird card for your order card, is going to go to such a clearing with the most enemy buildings and tokens. So not only is the bird card taking into account all clearings in the whole map, it's actually kind of going more on the offensive. They're going to go to the clearings with the most enemy buildings and tokens, and because next up, spoiler, is battle. So it's taking the fight to the enemy, as opposed to, if it's not a bird card, it's going to go to the spot with the most empty building slots where they can build up their stuff, and fewest enemy warriors. Then, if you don't have any tunnels in supply, if all 3 of them are out on the board, you're going to take and place the tunnel from the clearing with the fewest duchy warriors. So it'll never fizzle just because you don't have a tunnel to place. You'll just close up one of the tunnels and open one somewhere else. Simple as that. All right, next up, battle. You'll battle in each ordered clearing, and it says remember captain. Off to the side, the captain has an ability, just like the 4 mole. As attacker in battle, deal an extra hit if the battle clearing has a tunnel. So remember we talked about how the dig action with the bird card was going on the offensive. So not only is it just seeking the most cardboard populous clearing and attacking immediately afterwards as part of the big battle, it also gets to deal 1 extra hit because you just opened up a tunnel there. So it's guaranteed to have like a +1 battle. Defender ties player there with the most buildings, then most pieces, then most points. So it wants to clear out buildings so it can be placing theirs, which makes sense. Third step in Daylight, build. In the clearing you rule with the most duchy warriors. Does not need to be an ordered clearing. Just any clearing you rule that has the most duchy warriors in it. Place a citadel if you have 9 or more warriors in your supply. Otherwise, place a market. So this is the reason why I had you putting 9 warriors off by themselves. You don't need to, then you'll just need to count each time. But for me, it was a lot easier if I just had that one little quadrant or that zone where I had 9 warriors and everything else was coming from the other pile. That at a moment's glance, again, my goal when I'm playing the bots is to make all of this as simple as possible, because I don't want to be spending a ton of time. There's going to be times when you have to look around and find the tiebreakers and all that, but I want to streamline, as much as I can to make these turns as painless as possible so I can get back to my turns, or if I'm playing a Robo Rumble, to the other bot's turns. So you have those 9 warriors over there. If they are untouched, that means you have 9 or more, in which case they're going to put out citadels. And the reason they're putting out citadels is so they can be recruiting more moles. Makes sense. If they have more, or I should say less moles in supply because there are more on the map, that means they're doing pretty well. So that's when they're going to be putting out markets, because those will score them points. Then you're going to score 1 victory point if you cannot place a building while this board has any buildings on it. So if you have moles only in clearings you either don't rule or they don't have available building slots, so there are buildings bottlenecked over here that you can't build, you get a victory point. Doesn't just fizzle, something else happens, so they get a benefit. And then fourth up, you're going to take ministers. Take actions of all your swayed ministers from top to bottom. So we'll go through those now. We've already talked about the captain. Marshal is the topmost rabbit minister. Place a warrior into a clearing that has the fewest duchy warriors and a duchy building. So just kind of popping out an extra guy onto the map. We talked about the formal, which is the top mouse minister. Brigadier, take the dig action if the borough has 3 or more warriors. For this dig action, use the clearing tie condition for the bird order. So it is an additional dig action which is going to start at 3 warriors, not the normal 4, and because the fox ministers are more kind of the warlike ones, it's taking the bird version of the dig action, which is the one where they're going on the offensive. Now they don't get to immediately take an attack, but they are they're preparing themselves for an attack later on. Banker, second rabbit minister, take the build action. So just do it again. Mayor, the second mouse one, remove a duchy warrior from the clearing you rule with the most duchy warriors. If you do, score a victory point. So kind of hedging your bets, just kind of going up on victory by lessening your board presence, but also helping out, making sure you don't totally dry up your recruiting ability. Because in many games with the Drillbit Duchy, there'll come a time when they can't fully recruit because they have too many guys either waiting in the burrow or out on the map. So this is kind of getting them back while getting a victory point. And then the last 3 are the big guys at the bottom of the minister stack that are going to score you victory points. So for foxes, Earl of Stone gets you 1 victory point per citadel on the map. The rabbits, Baron of Dirt, score 1 per market on the map. And then the mouse, Duchess of Mud, score 2 victory points if all tunnels are on the map. So you're going to go in order from top to bottom, take all those actions. That's the final step of Daylight. And then we go into evening. So the first step of evening, Rally, is one of the aspects of this board that was kind of developed later on, which I think is really great. I think it works out really nicely. So it just sort of adjusts the board state to protect buildings and to prime the burrow to do more dig actions. In each ordered clearing with no duchy buildings and 2 or fewer duchy warriors, move all the duchy warriors to an adjacent clearing with a duchy building. So if you know, all the moving that had gone on, or a battle that had, you know, decimated some of the warriors, in the aftermath of that, they're going to consolidate in clearings that have buildings, which I think is a pretty smart move that many human players do. Now, if there is a tie, if there are multiple clearings for them to go to, they're going to go to such clearing with the fewest duchy warriors. So makes sense. If there are 2 duchy warriors kind of alone by themselves here and 2 buildings they can go to, this one has 3 warriors and this one has 1, they're going to go over here. So now both buildings have 3 duchy warriors protecting them. Again, a pretty sensible move. If no such clearing exists, there are those same 2 warriors maybe have other clearings that have other duchy warriors but no duchy buildings, then place the warriors that you would move in the burrow. Now remember, this is in all ordered clearings. So on bird card, it's everywhere. And so if there isn't an adjacent clearing with a building, an earlier version of this said they would make a intermediate move, kind of like move to a clearing that would maybe next time get them back to a building. This just says, boom, send them back to the burrow. They're going to be fodder to dig with next turn. Then in each clearing you rule, place all but 4 duchy warriors in the burrow. So, you know, in another example, if there are those same 2 warriors, if there's only the one clearing with the 3 warriors over here, and they go whoop, and now there's 5, that 5th one will go to the burrow, again, to prime the moles for a better dig action next time, while still keeping the buildings protected. Then, second part of evening, score 1 victory point per market on the map. Third, sway. Place a crown on the topmost ordered unswayed minister. So that ordered card, you're going to find the topmost one without a crown already, plop it down. They do not get a victory point like the human moles do, because they're getting victory points from other sources. So placing a crown gets them nothing. It just unlocks the ability next to the minister. No such minister. So if they already unlocked all their foxes and it's a fox order card, you're going to instead sway the bottommost unswayed minister. So this is pretty awesome, because it's not just sway if you're using bird, it's always going to be top down. So, you know, in this example, we have all 3 foxes swayed, and you have bird, then you would go whoop to marshal. If it was a fox ordered card and you have all 3 foxes swayed, you're going to sway from the bottom up, which means you're going to unlock these 3 down here first that are going to be the ones that score you victory points. They're benefited by, you know, maxing out one of the suits, because then they're going to be unlocking those victory point centric ones down here, which is cool. And then last but not least, discard the order card. So it's all gone. So that's the board, front and back. So let's go over to the table, and this is a little bit more interesting. It forced me to be a little more like thought intensive for the example turn, which I think is still a beneficial thing for someone who's just learning the faction from scratch. For the Clockwork 2 bots, if you have this rulebook, you may have seen this page, and it looks very different from the example pages that we had previously, which was much more narrative, and it had a map down here. So this is more just telling you the relevant parts of the map. So I needed to sort of reverse engineer this to make it into a map, and that's what we'll do over here. So join me at the table, and we'll go over one example turn of the Drillbit Duchy. And welcome to the table. First of all, before I get into it, I have to say, as much as I absolutely adore all things leader games, these explanation example turns were a lot easier for me to stage than these ones. And it's not just because it's not shown in the form of a map, it's because this example doesn't exist in any of these worlds. So in terms of the matchup of priority markers and suits for the different clearings, what you see in front of you is I took this script and I made it so it demonstrates all the same things, but in a way that I can have on a map here. I don't know, I'm sure there's a reason why they went away from the map-based example to a more hypothetical situation, but in any case, I wanted to keep this as part of the teaching instructions because I think it's a handy thing to have, and if it's not, you can always skip past it. So I needed to make it usable. So here we are. Here is our Drillbit Duchy example turn with my reconstruction of, again, the concepts on here, but if you're following along with the rule book, be prepared. There's a lot that's changed from that example. All right, those of you with eagle vision may have noticed I changed a couple of things because, try as I might, missed some stuff from the script. So it is your birdsong. You draw and you reveal a card. So you have mouse in a sack, which is a mouse order card. However, we're not going to craft the item because there aren't any bags over there to be crafted. Womp womp. So the 4 warriors placed in the burrow. So we have 1 because we're on easy. So we only recruit 1, but then 1 per mole icon showing. So we have 2 icons for the 2 citadels out on the map, and then 1 for having the 4 mole sway. So our four moles go into the burrow. Boom. Birdsong taken care of. Next up, daylight. First off, we're going to dig. So if the burrow has 4 or more warriors, which it does, we're going to place a tunnel in an ordered clearing with no tunnel, no duchy buildings, and also move the 4 warriors from the burrow into it. So since we're mouse order card, we're looking at clearing 9, it's got a tunnel, so it doesn't count. So 7, 11, and 2. So none of those have a tunnel, nor do they have a duchy building. So we have to go to the tiebreakers. So since it's not a bird order card, the first tiebreaker is such a clearing with the most empty building slots. 1, 1, and 1. Still tied. Then fewest enemy warriors. 2 and 1. 2 and just 1. So there we go. We've found our clearing to dig into. So we're going to move our 4 warriors, but the tunnel, we don't have one available over here. So we need to take it from somewhere else. The tiebreaker, if you have no tunnels, because you're going to close one up somewhere and move it somewhere else, take in place the tunnel from the clearing with the fewest duchy warriors. So 1 warrior, 0, and 1. That's easy. There we go. Well, we'll put it by the moles. So that's dig. Next up, we're going to battle in each ordered clearing, and remember captain, which we do have swayed. So we're going to do battle up in 2. So we do 1 and 0. However, because of captain, since we have a tunnel there, we're going to do an additional hit. So we actually do 2. So we do 1, 2, and we get a victory point for taking out the garden. Womp womp. Then we're going to also battle here in 9, where we're going to do 1 and 1, but again, we get an additional hit because of the captain. All right, so we battled in 9 against the birds, not the cats, because even though the cats have more victory points, the first tiebreaker is the number of buildings that the enemy player has in the clearing. So with 1 roost, they took the brunt of our attack. So when we come down here at clearing 7, same thing. We have the cats and the lizards. Lizards are higher on the victory points. However, that's a later tiebreaker. The cats have 1 building, so we're going to attack them. And we do nothing. 0, 0. Since we don't have a tunnel there, nothing happens. Next up, we're going to build in the clearing we rule with the most duchy warriors, which is number 2, where we just dug into this turn. And since we have our 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 moles, we're going to build citadel. If you have 9 or more moles in your supply, you build a citadel. If you have 8 or fewer, you build a market. And there we go. Next up, ministers. We're going to take the actions of all swayed ministers. So the captain and the 4 mole we can ignore because those are just abilities that happen wherever they need to happen. However, the marshal places 1 warrior into a clearing that has the fewest duchy warriors and a duchy building. So if we look at all of our building slots, we have 1 mole, 0 moles, 1 mole, 4 moles, and 0 moles. So we have a tie here, but again, priority always breaks the tie. So the mole is going to go into clearing number 1. And that's daylight. Next up, it's evening. First, we're going to rally. Now, in rally, in each ordered clearing with no buildings and 2 or fewer duchy warriors, we're going to move all of them to adjacent clearing with a duchy building. So the only clearing that actually applies to is number 7, because we have a building there, we have no mold anything here, and we only have a tunnel there. So this is the only one, no building, but we do have 2 warriors. So we look around at the adjacent clearings and we found one here. So smartly, these moles are going to move here to protect that citadel. Now, if that citadel hadn't been in clearing 12, those 2 moles instead would have went over to the burrow, just so they kind of bolster their, everything that they have over there. Good words, Kyle. Next up, we're going to score 1 victory point per market on the map. Since we have 2 markets out, that's going to be 2 VPs, so we're up to 8. And then we're going to sway. So we place a crown on the topmost ordered unswayed minister. So we already swayed that, the 4 mole, the first mouse minister. So then we're going to go down to mayor. And so starting next turn, they will remove a duchy warrior from the clearing we rule with the most duchy warriors, and if we do, score a victory point. And last but not least, we're going to discard our order card. And that is a turn with the Drillbit Duchy. Again, different than what you see in the rule book. Most of the actions were maintained, or at least most of the decisions were maintained. For instance, in the middle of filming this, I realized that when we lost that warrior over there, it threw my count off over here. So I had the requisite 9 moles to actually put down a citadel instead of a market. So at that point in the example turn, there were going to be fewer than 9 moles, so a market came out. But again, the decision-making process was maintained even if the route that I took was different. So hopefully that's helpful. To me, having something like this is a lot more beneficial than this, because to me, this is just sort of like an in-between step between the rules and an actual turn. This is just kind of holding all the actions on a board in your mind. This is actually seeing it take place. So leave a comment down below. Did you think this was helpful? Maybe I'm spending way more time than I need to, because I'm going to be honest, this took me way more time to prepare for than the original Clockwork ones, but happy to do so because this faction rules, and so do all the rest of the ROOTbots. So let's get back over and talk about the cards, including this one that we used. Aha, little sneak peek. All right, so last but not least, we have cards. So we weren't sure of exactly how the Clockwork 2 expansion was going to handle difficulty, whether it was going to do it the Better Bot Project way, which was integrating a variable onto the player board, or cards. I kind of assumed it would be the card method, and it is. So remember, the board is normal mode. If you play just off the board, that is the standard version of the bot. And then we have easy, challenging, and nightmare. So one easier and 2 more challenging versions. So on easy, whenever you recruit, instead recruit only 1 warrior plus 1 per mole icon. So it's not 2 plus 1 for each mole, it's just 1. So you're just recruiting fewer moles. Pretty simple. Challenging, you probably guessed it, is instead 3 So now you're recruiting 3 plus 1 for every mole icon. So again, instead of less moles or fewer moles for easy, now it's more for challenging. And for those who have been around the block a few times in these videos, you know what's coming up for Nightmare. It's the same thing as challenging, so 3 moles instead of 2, but at the end of evening, score 1 victory point. It's the formula that all the Nightmare cards follow. Now, just like with Clockwork 1, I'm going to give you the 4 trait cards. The difficulty I always view as the skill level of the ROOTbot, and the trait cards are kind of the personality. So this, the difficulty is purely, how challenging they're going to be on the map. The trait is going to kind of turn their strategy a little bit different than it might be on the board. And like I did before, I'm going to order these in my personal preference. So we're going to start off with my favorite to least favorite. So first off, Invaders. The clearing tie for the dig action is now such a clearing that has the most enemy buildings and the fewest enemy warriors, just across the board. Doesn't matter what type of card you draw for your order card, it's always going to be most buildings, enemy buildings, fewest warriors. If you cannot build because no building slots are open, battle in each clearing instead. I think this is a lot of fun. It means you're always going to be kind of in the sights of the Drillbit Duchy, and you can't really like lock them out because yes, they get a victory point if they can't place a building, but usually the downside to that outweighs the upside of just 1 victory point. So this makes it so they're actually reclaiming that those slots through battle, which I like. Second, Overwhelm. You now dig twice per turn. So you take that and just repeat that action a second time. And it now requires and moves only 3 warriors, not 4. So this is, I think, really cool because it makes them a lot more mobile. There are a lot of times, the part where it only takes and moves 3 warriors, that'll happen all the time, obviously. That'll mean that very early on in the game, this will start and will happen pretty much almost every turn of the game. Not the first turn, but, well, I guess if you're playing challenging, it would. But it means that, they're going to be regularly doing this with a smaller number of moles. It will not nearly as often that first part where it says it happens twice. That may only happen maybe once or possibly twice in a game. But when it happens, it's definitely noticeable, and yeah, it puts you on your heels because you're like, they're coming up from everywhere. Foundations. Now these first 2, just like with other factions, these first 2 are pretty close. The gold and silver medal are pretty close, and then the bronze and the runner-up are further back. I'm not as big a fan of these ones. So foundations, whenever cost of errors triggers, it now removes the crown from the bottommost swayed minister whose suit matches a clearing from which a building was removed. Okay. Sometimes this will just be, it'll change the outcome, the program that the Drillbit Duchy has created with its ministers that it's swayed. And other times, you may lose a building in a clearing where you don't have any ministers swayed from that type, in which case it's definitely a buff for the Drillbit Duchy. It's just that I didn't find that it was super impactful, though I can see times when it would definitely make things different. Instead of unswaying that bottommost, like Duchess of Mud, that's going to get 2 victory points for having all the tunnels out, it'll do 1 from a different suit. Or again, if it doesn't have any ministers from the suit of the clearing, then it doesn't unsway anyone. So there are definitely cool interactions with this. I just didn't find it as interesting as the other ones. And then the last place is also, again, interesting. It's going to definitely increase interaction between player and bot, which is Investors. Whenever a human triggers cost of errors, they must discard a card that matches a clearing from which a duchy building was removed. If they discard a matching card, the duchy loses 1 victory point. If they cannot, the duchy sways a minister, as in the sway action, but the minister must also match a clearing of removal. So again, it increases interaction because, you know, whether or not the player can discard, and if this is in play, you're definitely, as the player, going to be taking it into account. At least you should be, if you're ever going to remove one or more buildings, because, you know, having a card to discard and forcing them to lose a victory point, pretty good. Or you know, rather the other side saying, if I don't have one of those cards and they get to sway a minister for free, that's kind of brutal, or an additional one, I should say. But yeah, I like the fact that the other ones, even foundations, are more like, they are contained in the ROOTbot itself. What makes investors interesting is how the player interacts with them. I would rather have the ROOTbot become different, that forces the player to play differently because of that. But that's just me. You may have totally different opinions of the cards, and you are allowed to, because we all have our own opinions. And that's it. That's the Drillbit Duchy. I think I rambled on longer than I expected because I was excited to be back in this format. So sorry about that if it's super long. I hope to get this out pretty soon for the people who are anxiously looking at their Clockwork 2 box and not sure how to use it. I know I am really looking forward to getting the Marauder stuff to the table, especially the hireling stuff, which is not currently bot usable, but Benjamin Schmaus has said that absolutely plans on working on the rats and badgers bots, but also a format for how to use the hirelings with the ROOTbots, and that'll be the fodder for Clockwork 3 and work for down the road. So you can guarantee that once that starts coming up on the Better Bot Project forums, I will be covering it here. But for the time being, we have new official bots, so get them to the table, get playing, have a lot of fun. Thanks for being here and taking a pause with Give Pause, and I will see you all next time.